You've hit play on the Screen Companion, where we'll help you pick something for movie night. The 6th season of the Screen Companion in fall of 25. Mission Impossible Final Reckoning. This 8th entry in the long-running series finds Ethan Hunt and his crackerjack team of spies running against the clock as an artificial intelligence systematically gains control of the world's nuclear arsenals. In order to beat the entity, Ethan must give it what it wants, access to a bunker, so that it can ride out an apocalypse of its own making. Besides allying with new operatives, he'll also have to convince the president and the U.S. military to let him use its assets. The second part of a two-part story. Some believe the finale to Tom Cruise's journey as Ethan Hunt in the franchise, which began in 1996. Andrew, you were there with me last year to discuss Dead Reckoning. I want to start with, what spot would you put Final Reckoning in the overall ranking of the films?
It goes dead center. I think I would put it either spot 4 or 5.
Okay, I think I'm close to your thinking. I put it in the 6th spot. It's better than the second one, and it's better than the third one.
Yeah, it's definitely better than 2 and 3. The reason why it's like number 4 or 5 for me is I feel like Ghost Protocol and then Dead and Final Reckoning, those 3 are like interchangeable in quality for me. Dead Reckoning was good. Maybe it would edge this one out a little bit, but not enough to where I would say it's like a sure winner. 4, 7, and 8 are the dead heat for whatever position they're in.
What do you think it is about Dead Reckoning that would put it a hair over this one?
I think the pacing of Dead Reckoning was a little bit better.
Not much shorter, though.
The scene in the nightclub was, oddly enough, one of the most tense things in almost any of the Mission Impossible movies.
Whoa, wait a second, Andrew. Tell me for real, did you listen to our MI7 episode?
No, I haven't.
To prep for this, you didn't?
I didn't, no.
Because I swear to God, that's the exact same thing you pointed out the last time.
It's true, though, dude.
Nobody can say you're not consistent.
It's true. It's true.
That nightclub scene, you love that scene.
Loved it. I still love it. One of the reasons why I loved it so much is because something that kind of also you mentioned in the Jack Ryan podcast with Harrison Ford, and I think more so in Clear and Present Danger, which we didn't talk about. There's something for me where to have a high level of tension in a scene where maybe some people have guns, maybe the guns are drawn, but you know that there's not really going to be any violence, but there might be some violence. I love it when a movie can achieve maximum tension with just dialogue and the environment and just the expressions on people's faces. That's why I love that nightclub scene so much. Yeah, so I stand by it. Final Reckoning, I think, just didn't have any moments like that. It also had, and it makes sense. I get that it's the 8th movie, and it's supposed to be the last of these Mission Impossible movies for Tom Cruise. I mean, the way it ended, he could come back, right?
Yeah.
I doubt he'll be dangling off of planes again unless he really wants to. There was a lot of fan service-y moments in this one that I don't want to say took away from it. Like, they all made sense, but it was kind of like, okay, like, I get it. One of the high points for me in this movie was we finally found out what the rabbit's foot was in MI3.
Oh, man, you like that?
I liked it only in the sense, at least they solved the mystery. That was one of my problems with MI3, was that we didn't know what he was even stealing. So now we at least know.
But it's a solution they never planned. J.J. Abrams, that hack, never planned it to be the entity.
No, he never planned it. I'm not saying that this retroactively makes the third one good. I think it's just interesting that they went back, connecting all the movies now. How is MI3 going to fit into it? Oh, well, let's make the rabbit's foot this thing. I will say one thing I think that's hilarious. MI2 got no callbacks. Not even like Thandie Newton making a comeback or just a cameo. There was nothing from MI2, which I thought was so funny.
I don't think that was well deserved. I mean, if this is going to honor the franchise, you have to honor all of it. Even the runt.
It would have been nice if they did, but I don't know how they could have, other than just like during one of those things where it's like, think of all your struggles, Ethan, and you see something from MI2. That would have been nice, because I don't think there was anything, even in like the flashbacks or montage, whatever, that even hinted to that movie happening. With this one, it had some good action set pieces, but it never achieved the level of tension that I think other MI movies have done.
Talking about all those callbacks, it feels like this movie learned the worst lesson from Spectre. Trying to tie all this stuff together and bringing back that CIA drone from the first movie that got sent to Alaska. We didn't need to see him. Nobody had any questions about what happened to that guy. Come on.
For stuff like that, I agree with you, we don't need it, but at least it's kind of like, okay, they're making an effort to do a send-off, so I can understand why they're doing it. I don't necessarily agree with it, but it's kind of like, okay, sure, whatever.
That dude was such a big part of the movie, too. Man, did you think he was going to be in the movie that much?
No, it's interesting that they made him a bigger part of it instead of a cameo. Like, it was interesting that he had a use outside of just, oh, it's that guy. Now, I know that they could have done it anywhere with any other character. They didn't have to make it him. I know that it was just to be like, hey guys, look, remember him?
What you should do when you bring in a character like that who really isn't connected to the audience, and you could do anything with that character, such as killing him off. And when he's in that research outpost with his wife, and their house is lit on fire, and you think maybe he died, that would have been great, because he is a character that's expendable. But no, he didn't die. What's up with all the death fake-outs in this movie? There was him, Benji, Ethan Hunt.
Yeah.
They repeat themselves a lot in this movie.
Yeah, but I'm trying to think, like, other than the bad guys, the MI movies, generally speaking, don't have a lot of good guys eating it. It's also still par for the course.
Let's hear it. I need that key and the use of a ship, specifically an aircraft carrier.
He wants the use of a $6.5 billion nuclear-powered military asset. To do what exactly?
Use that key and what it opens to kill the entity. Why the hell would I do what you suggest? Respectfully, Madam President, you have no other choice. There is always another choice. No, ma'am. In this case, not a good one. Every nation had a chance to take their missiles offline. No one trusted anyone else to do that. The Defense Department will have no choice but to insist that you open that case, enter the codes, and launch an all-out preemptive strike on the world's 8 other nuclear arsenals before the entity takes control of ours. Madam President, either you destroy the world or the entity does. You ran the CIA. You know psychological warfare. When you see it, just look around. We are in the entity's reality. And I believe it's counting on you to stop me.
If what you're saying is true, how can you be sure the entity doesn't want us to do exactly what you're proposing right now?
Because it knows you would never do anything so illogical that you would be insane to trust me. And that is precisely why you should. For once, let's let the entity worry about what we're going to do. Madam President, please, I'm asking for 3 days. Will you keep the world calm? 3 days. Have I ever let you down before?
I'd like to go back to some things we talked about in our discussion of Dead Reckoning. Things we were happy about that wasn't a plot point in the first part, and whether or not that extended to this part. So you had mentioned in our Dead Reckoning review how Ethan is always going rogue. And there's a case to be made here that he's not rogue this time. Angela Bassett, the president, sent him on his mission, right?
Technically speaking, he's still kind of rogue.
I mean, he had to get captured first.
He had to get captured, but like it's more like the president went rogue and is kind of letting him do his thing. Is what it was. They all shot Ethan's idea down, but he got sanctioned by the president to do whatever he needed to do. Yeah, he didn't really go rogue in this one. He was given the keys to the kingdom by a rogue president.
The cruciform key to the kingdom?
Exactly, yeah.
I want to mention about that key. Did you know there's a popcorn bucket for this movie that looks like the entity's bathysphere from the Sevastopol?
Yeah, I think I saw it when I went to go see the movie. They had it on display.
I didn't know it was only at Regal Theaters. So when I went to the theater I went to watch this, I was so hoping to see it on sale and I was going to scoop it up. Well, it wasn't, and it was sold out on the Regal site, so I had to basically go through the aftermarket and pay an exorbitant amount of money. But I must report to everybody that the cruciform key that comes with the bucket in the top of it, it's cool. It's actually made out of metal.
Cool.
Yeah, I was expecting some cheap little plastic thing, but it wasn't. It was clack them together, and I put them together, and for a second I imagined, oh my god, I can control the entity with this.
Sounds like it was worth the money.
It was worth it in that these movies don't have a lot of merchandise, or at least stuff that I would be interested in displaying. Going back to the poster for the first movie, do you recall that poster?
From what I remember, it was just like Ethan's face, right? Like his side profile, and it's kind of like blue.
Yeah, in shadow, and it's a picture of the globe and Ethan's head. Not very interesting visually.
Mm.
So yeah, I saw the bathysphere popcorn bucket, and I thought, well, this is the culmination of a journey I started back in 1996, when I was 8 years old. The fact that I'm still around, and that Tom Cruise is still around, having made these movies, it was just an occasion I wanted to mark. Anyway, one thing that I said is that I didn't want Ilsa's death to be a fake out, because there were some rumors, maybe hopeful rumors, that she would appear in this movie. She stayed dead, yay!
Yeah, she did.
Not only did she stay dead, it's like they thought she had been in MI2. They don't mention her at all, do they?
If they do, it's very brief. I think the bad guy, Gabriel, right? I think he might have mentioned it at some point, and she was just like a casualty, and that was it.
And considering she died in a duel with Gabriel, I just feel like Ethan should have said something.
It's weird that she wasn't mentioned. You know, she's built up as like, you know, Ethan's love interest, I felt, and a rival in a way, but not really a rival, like a playful rival. You figured that'd be more of a part of it, where like there'd be almost like a revenge aspect being also in Ethan's plan.
Become an active listener by joining the Screen Companion. Subscribe on YouTube, hit us up on X, and our Facebook group. Let us know your favorite episodes and what topics or films we should tackle next. Further support the host by buying his novel, Self-Recognition, a futuristic detective story, available on Amazon in print and digital formats. Now back to the show. This next one, this one had me howling when I heard it on the last episode. Okay, this is paraphrasing something you said. I don't want a launching of all the nukes. I don't want a world-ending event.
Yeah.
Were you unhappy about that in this one?
Not as much as you'd probably think, because I didn't go back and listen to it. I wasn't happy about it in that sense, but just logically speaking, I really don't know where else it could have gone.
Something they should have played with that would have brought it more in line with the first movie, bring it more into espionage territory, because the entity controls all information, I would have loved to have seen this movie an on-the-run film for Ethan Hunt, where the entity has let out all of his secrets, and every criminal organization or Blofeld type of character that Ethan's ever dealt with, who maybe only knew him as John Lark, now they all know who he is. His face is plastered everywhere, and they're all out to get him. That's what you could have done with the entity instead of the nuclear angle.
Yeah, they could have done other things, because it was interesting in the beginning of the movie when he was getting his orders, and you gotta stop the entity, because this is what it's doing. It mentioned the fake news aspect of the entity and what it can do and manipulate information. And that was even in Dead Reckoning. See, now the movie's kind of slipping a little bit in my mind now that we're talking about it. I remember that was in Dead Reckoning, was at times a paranoia of what's the entity controlling things and what it not. You know, with Ethan's plays in this film, it made perfect sense. Of course, you're going to stick to analog technology that the entity is not controlling, but it took out the paranoia aspect of things. He's fighting the AI, but the AI is not doing AI stuff other than launching nukes.
I feel like that's a big part of the setup to this movie. It's supposed to be at least a couple months, maybe 6 months since Dead Reckoning.
Long enough for him to grow his hair out. About a good, 3 inches, yeah.
So a big thing that they set up at the beginning is that the entity has had time to manipulate world media. People are all doom and gloom. There are cults around this thing. People are protesting in the streets. And all we see of the effect the entity has on the world is what? Some piddly short scene in, I think, London? You see some Brits throwing Molotov cocktails.
Yeah.
We never see the entity's effect on the rest of the populace. For a movie that costs something like $400 million, why couldn't you have shown me more that was outside of that window? What's happening in the world? Because just about all the mission movies, this has such a villain problem. I don't really get the full extent, besides the nukes, of how evil the entity is and how it's enslaving people through disinformation. What I would have loved to have seen in a movie that's practically 3 hours long, instead of all that stupid exposition at the beginning that I feel like treats the audience like we don't remember the other movie, who's really coming into this having not watched the last movie?
Yeah.
But even so, you can quickly set up the stakes. Just give us some diner, some family eating, and then some crazy protest erupts. Cut to another part of the world, and some guy is working at a train station, and then mayhem ensues. And then maybe the camera pulls back and you see little fires around the world or something, and you realize, oh my god, this is happening all over the planet. People are going nuts. They're believing whatever they need to believe for violence sake. And that's it. You could have done all that in 10, 15 minutes instead of the first, half hour, where they constantly sit in a room finishing each other's sentences, saying, oh, the entity has total control and will destroy us, and it's so evil. It's like, I get it. The entity's bad. Stop it.
Yeah. I think this was what I was afraid of with Dead Reckoning. They did set it up to where it was too big of a threat and they had to go nuclear. I mean, obviously what you're saying is doable, but I think they went the easier route. But it also makes sense. Of course it's going to go nuclear because that's what we're probably wanting to see or we figure is going to happen. The paranoia of Dead Reckoning was one of the things I liked about it the most, and then this one just became... It was a send-off movie, and I think that's ultimately what I was afraid of, was just it being a send-off film.
Yes, you've got a good memory. That is something you mentioned. We're on opposite sides of the issue in that regard. I wanted this to be the undiscovered country of this franchise. I didn't need Ethan to die, but I wanted some acknowledgement that time had moved on and that he should stop being a field agent, which is something you expressly didn't want in the last movie, and probably this one too. Basically, you didn't want them to acknowledge his age, and you said it would make it less timeless. But you know what, Andrew? I am a mortal being. I will not be on this earth forever. So whether it's timeless or not, I don't care. I just want some resolution.
I understand, but I'll still stand by that to an extent, just because if you acknowledge his age more, it makes it, I think, a little, I don't want to say ludicrous, because, I mean, obviously he's actually doing these stunts, but it does make it a little less timeless. But they acknowledge the timeline in the movie, so you know it's been a long time. For me, like, the whole it being a culmination type movie is just essentially what they did, where they tied everything together and made a big deal out of it.
Did that work for you when the entity is speaking to Ethan directly and outlining its weird-ass plan?
Yeah, I wasn't thrilled with it, but I'm glad they got it out of the way quickly, because it does happen pretty early in the film.
This being an almost 3-hour-long movie, were you able to sit through the whole time without taking a pee break?
I did. I will say I intentionally didn't drink a lot of water before the movie, though.
I did the same thing, but I couldn't make it.
I did have to pee during the trailers, because I was like, okay, this is good. And I just got it out real fast, and then I was able to make it through the whole movie.
I can tell you, in my screening, which was moderately packed, the scene where Ethan goes down to the sunken submarine, I saw like 20 guys get up. Because as much as I enjoy the scene overall, damn, it moves like molasses.
That was a really slow thing, and like yeah, it did kind of drag on. It looked cool, but whatever.
After how bloated the last one was, and then this one just continued it, I'm starting to question if they really are very good storytellers.
I think they are.
What do you think it is that McQuarrie, he was there for 5, he's been there since 5, and I would say we both liked 5 and 6 a lot. What do you think's happened over the course of these movies? What do you think changed?
I think they tried to go too big. That's what it comes down to for me. The pacing was just kind of off. Things they set up in the first, in Dead Reckoning, just didn't have much of a payoff in Final Reckoning. I remember I said that I wish they ended Dead Reckoning sooner on the train before it went over the cliff, or as it was going over the cliff, because I think a cliffhanger ending would have been perfect instead of what we got, which was like sequel bait ending, right?
Yeah.
If you opened Final Reckoning with essentially the train dangling scene, that would have been a better intro, because you start with action immediately. And I know that that's essentially the beginning of Uncharted 2, the video game, but it's a great intro. Like, the stakes were just too high, and they focus on the nukes and the end game aspect, or the end of the world aspect, too much versus the paranoia of the machine being in charge. Stuff that made the first one interesting ended up just not being reused, really, I think.
Something they really underutilized in an 8th movie of a long-running franchise are the things you can do with the characters that you can't do when it's the first movie, or even just the third in a trilogy. Case in point, Benji needed to die. He just needed to die.
I was waiting for that specifically for you. There are times when a character dying is actually the best way to wrap up their story arc, and I think that would have been good with Benji. Just make there another sacrifice, especially for the end of something. It just kind of works out, I think.
Yeah, I'm not a believer in this argument that because they're the best of the best, that these agents would flawlessly pull this stuff off, and to have one of them die would make it seem like they're not professionals.
Yeah.
Me loving the first movie, some of it has to do with the fact that most of them die in the first mission. The first mission of the first mission. Benji, he's a tech geek. Being in the field doesn't come naturally to him. And he went on this arc where he wasn't really comfortable out in the field. And then He's willing to sacrifice himself in the 5th movie, in the 6th movie. And I just don't believe that Benji has what it takes to survive this long.
I agree.
When he's getting into fights.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, we can just kind of chalk it up to experience, and maybe Ethan gave him some fighting lessons. I like my characters going out as heroes. So I think with Benji, you can have him a lot more comfortable in field work and I'll say violence in this movie. They could have given him a moment where make him like a bona fide badass for once for like maybe a couple minutes where he's kicking ass and taking names and then sacrifices himself to save Haley Atwell's character because, you know, she's the person with the quick thief hands that needed to take out the entity. I wish there were casualties. There was even that one character who legitimately said, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing now. And, like, he ended up surviving. Which is fine. You had a character say that, like, he's expendable. And then he wasn't. And that was the thing with Benji. The state he gets to in the climax of the film, like, he shouldn't have survived. I'm sorry.
And I don't have anything against Simon Pegg. It's just the character. They say, like, Ilsa Faust ran her course. And it's like, what do you do with her? So we killed her. Well, that goes doubly so for Benji. I don't like that he's the humor guy, too. Like, when they go to the research station, and Benji's taking the lead, and he tells his team, look, okay, don't say why we're here, don't give any information, just let me do the talking. And then he immediately blows their cover. It's like, oh, that's so funny. Oh, Benji, that's so funny and endearing. You're so professional. Yeah, you make this group of agents look top-notch. I'm so glad you're on the team, and somehow your stupidity hasn't killed you yet.
Yeah. I don't like the comic relief characters. You can tell they're really trying to make them super funny. He's definitely one of them.
And just like Dead Reckoning, they mentioned at the beginning of that movie how every nation knows about the entity. They're all trying to figure out what to do about it. And then in this movie, that's still the case. And everybody knows somehow about everybody else's nuclear arsenals and their status. But the only other country we see get involved is Russia. Why don't we see the Mossad? Why don't we see China's intelligence service? Why isn't this just a smorgasbord of their own versions of the IMF? That's just another thing that makes this movie feel oddly small, even though it is about ending the world with nukes.
I mean, for China, weren't they one of the first countries that, like, lost control of their nukes or something? I don't remember.
If you were in country Z, and you knew about the entity and what its goal was, maybe not the exact details, but you knew it wasn't good for the human population, wouldn't you be throwing every resource you have and trying to find a solution?
Guess not. You know, they know Ethan Hunt's on the case. They're just like, hey, look, he's been thwarting us for years. He'll figure it out.
So there's a thing I like to do, because you know me, notoriously, I do not care for long movies, and any way to shorten them I will do. For example, the next time I watch Spectre, I am going to skip everything in Mexico and the opening song, and I'm just going to go straight to M and Bond, where they're basically just talking about what we saw Bond do in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's like a good 20 minutes that we've shaved off of it. My proposal for Final Reckoning, folks, just start the movie at Mount Weather when Ethan, not even the president and her team, just right when Ethan steps out of Mount Weather and we see him walking to the helicopter. That's when this movie should start.
Yeah, that is a good spot to start it. Because he has his orders at that point, yeah.
Are you not going to figure out the plot? Do you need the first 20 minutes to find out what's happening? Because they'll say it again at some point, right?
Yeah, they will. They say it a few times.
So, if there is a ninth movie, do you want Tom Cruise to come back at all, or do you want a fresh new team? Do you want some characters from the team in this one to show up? Who do you want?
If they're going to bring anyone back, I imagine they would probably bring back Haley Atwell. I think they did try to build her up as the next Ethan. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's her coming back, and I'd be fine with that. I'd be happy with it. I don't think I'd want Benji. Definitely not the guy from the first one who was like a big part of the movie after all. And if Ethan comes back, I think it would be nice to see him for one more, but I would probably just bring him back to be like a consultant or something. Someone who was involved in some way, shape, or form with the current mission, maybe indirectly from the past, and he has to clear some things up. Make it like the rabbit's foot, right? Like, oh, go get the rabbit's foot 2.0, and it's just Ethan. I don't always like it when they bring someone back just to be like, oh, well, everything in this movie is this person's fault, so retroactively they sucked this whole time and we just didn't know it. I would just do it like, like he's just going to be a mentor, or he's going to have a crucial piece of information in his files or something like that.
Springboarding off of what you just said, him as a mentor, it's conjuring up this image. I want my mission movies more grounded, more realistic. How about it's a bunch of junior agents and Ethan's teaching an ethics class, and he gives a speech about the morality that they're going to have to deal with, because, damn, we really know very little about Ethan Hunt when you get right down to it. I was hoping they would get more into his psyche in this one. And besides the fact that he won't risk his people, and he'll always double, triple, quadruple down, he's a gambler, which they already said in the fifth one. Yeah, just tell me more about the guy. I heard through an interview with the director that they did pay attention to people's response to the first part. And this movie, the two movies, had such a long production time that they actually were able to adjust some things. And I think they adjusted Gabriel. Because did you notice how smarmy he is in this one compared to the last one?
He wasn't as robotic and weird. It's nice that they listen to audiences, but I never really considered Gabriel the big bad anyways. I didn't feel like it made him any better of a villain. Because it's the entity that's the big bad.
Not a better villain, but it made him more interesting because it moved the needle into Jonathan Pryce territory from Tomorrow Never Dies.
You know, it's funny that you would mention that, because that's exactly what I felt watching the sub scene. When the missiles were dropping, when he was inside the sub, I was like, oh, it's just like when Bond and Wei Lin were pinned in the missile room, right?
Oh, yeah.
The ship is like losing its footing on the ocean floor, and I was thinking about that a lot watching that scene. I was like, oh, Tomorrow Never Dies did this. And shorter, and I think better.
Yeah, exactly. How long is that scene? Like 5 minutes?
I don't even think it's that long. Tomorrow Never Dies, one of the reasons I love it just powers through everything. A very nice, like, briefer than usual Bond movie, and I think it works to its advantage.
Supposing that this is it. These 8 movies, this is all of the Mission Impossible canon. If they release a box set 20 years from now, it's just these 8 movies. What final thoughts would you have for us?
When I came home from watching it at the theaters, I was asked how it was. I said, it was all right. And my fiance and her friends chuckled because they're like, oh, okay, like it wasn't that great. I did tell them after I said that, to put it in perspective, the baseline for these films is excellence. And I kind of stand by that. MI1, it's a great movie, I think.
It's a classic.
Yeah, and then you get to 4, 5, 6. I would argue 7 to an extent, but 4, 5, and 6 is like this neat little trilogy within the 8. Not just a trilogy in that they're a 1, 2, 3 punch. Even the stories go together. Those 3 movies are interconnected in their own way. Those are like 3 of the best. All these movies are just arguably just really all of them are pretty good except for 2 and 3. I feel like I've been grousing about this one quite a bit. but I think it's mostly because I know what the series is capable of. So I think that's why it was a little bit of... It wasn't the send-off that I was hoping for. It wasn't the ending that I was imagining. I think the three best in the franchise are 1, 5, and 6. When you compare it to those, well, of course it's not going to be as good as those, because those are pretty much like perfect action films.
Having stuck with the franchise this whole time, even at the nadir that I thought the third movie was, because you got to remember, in the year 2000, MI2 was the #1 grossing movie, and say what you will about it, it is a 2000s movie. It's balls to the wall 2000s. It was perfect for its time.
You're absolutely right about it being a 2000s movie.
Oh, dude, maybe you would have liked it more had you seen it back then. It was a real experience.
I bet. I would have been 11 or 12, depending on when that movie came out at that point in the year. Probably 11 because I have a late birthday. Yeah, I bet I would have loved it if I saw it in theaters.
Hell yeah. So, having all these memories of the movies, what it comes down to, even all the ways I've knocked Final Reckoning, I see so much effort put on screen. And it's so unique that an actor/producer sticks with a franchise this long and is able to shape it. So even when this movie and any of the other movies aren't working in a scene, I still appreciate it because he does his own stunts. He puts himself out there. He puts all of his time and effort into it. And I don't really get that feeling from a lot of modern movies. They just feel like total cash grabs. And I've heard it said that Tom Cruise has been doing these movies because he thinks that's what the industry needs at a time when they're not doing so great. Movies aren't the blockbusters they used to be. And I know I've said on our Born on the 4th of July episode that I think Tom Cruise could be a great dramatic actor. And I wondered, did he just want to chase fame and fortune or what? Why didn't he do more Magnolia type of work? In interviews, I've heard it said that he's made the choice to make these crazy big movies to try to get people back into theaters. Because you're not going to see this on the Netflix model necessarily, except for some of the incredible budgets for a couple things, but normally not. And it gives me a new appreciation for the guy. And so I think about that for this series. And it's going to be a while, but the next time I watch MI2, I'm going to remember that this guy just cared so dang much. And he made bold choices. He was willing to give John Woo the second movie in a popular franchise, or the nascent franchise. So he didn't just stick to a ready formula, which these last couple feel pretty formulaic. But he took a lot of risks at the beginning, and he put up his own salary for the first movie for them to give him a chance and let him prove that he knew his stuff. So, as a piece of film history, it's an incredible series.
I agree with you. I mean, you saw the message at the beginning of the movie where he's like thanking people for seeing it in theaters. He's trying to save the movie industry. That's why Top Gun Maverick wasn't released until it was. Because I think the movie was done, and then he was like, nope, it's not streaming. This is a theaters movie. And made $1 billion. I wish this one made $1 billion, but, you know.
We get a whole conversation about how so much was working against these two movies, whether or not they were good.
But regardless, thank you, Mr. Tom Cruise, for giving me some great theater memories.
You've reached the end of this episode of The Screen Companion. Thank you for listening.